Hello and welcome back to Classics and Commas. Last time we left Pip terrified in the marshes, having just helped an escaped convict. Today we are picking up the story exactly where we left off with chapter number 2, The Manhunt on the Marshes. Things are about to get very tense, so let's not waste any time. Let's dive right in. Before we continue, here is a quick recap so you are fully caught up. Pip, a young orphan, visited his parents' grave alone in the cold marshes of Kent. An escaped convict, Magwitch grabbed him and demanded food and metal file. Terrified but kind, Pip agreed to help him, despite his fear. And Magwitch broke free of his chains, leaving Pip to run home in guilt and fear, crying a secret he was terrified anyone would discover. Now, chapter number 2 begins at the Christmas dinner table. Here is what we are covering in today's video. First, a quick chapter summary. Then we are going to watch four major scenes come to life. I have prepared short clips for each one so you can easily, see those moments, not just hear them about. After that, we'll look at the setting, tone, and mood because this chapter uses something really clever, a contrast between two very different worlds. Then some new difficult words, some literary terms, and finally, questions to carry with you into chapter 3. Let's begin. So chapter 2 takes us on on quite a journey. So let me give you the full shape of it before we go scene by scene. So we open at the Christmas dinner table where guilt completely overwhelms Pip as the adults around him preach endlessly about how boys or bad boys behave. Then soldiers arrive, but they are not there for Pip. They need Joe, the blacksmith, to repair a broken pair of handcuffs for a manhunt that's happening on the marshes. Joe, Pip, and the soldiers march out into the freezing marshes hunting two escaped convicts. They find the convicts fighting each other violently in the mud, and in a stunning moment, Magwitch protects Pip's secret completely. Finally, Magwitch takes the blame for the theft himself to protect Pip and is taken away forever on the present ship. Let's watch each of these key moments unfold. It is a Christmas dinner, and the table is full of food that gets us cheerful, but Pip is dying inside. Why? Because he had secretly watered down the brandy bottle to hide how much he had stolen from Magwitch, and now Uncle Pumblechook is about to drink it.
A boy who takes what isn't his will come to a very bad end indeed. This brandy tastes watered.
Pumblechook drinks it and immediately starts coughing violently. Pip panics completely and bolts for the door. And there, blocking his escape, stands soldiers holding handcuffs. Now, here is what makes Dickens such a genius. Pip is absolutely convinced. He's convinced that these soldiers are, there to arrest him for the pie, the brandy, and the theft. This is called the psychological trap of guilt. Pip is under constant emotional pressure from hypocritical adults who preach kindness and morality but treat him harshly. His guilt is so intense that it completely distorts reality. The soldiers are not there for him at all, but he cannot see that. That is how powerful guilt can be for a child. Now let's look at the next scene that we have here. So it turns out the soldiers only need one thing, that's Joe, the blacksmith, to fix their broken handcuffs. Once repaired, something remarkable will happen.
Fixed then? We march within the hour.
Good as new. Ready when you are.
Joe, Mr. Wopsle, and Pip all join the soldiers, marching out into the freezing, wet marshes to hunt down the two escaped convicts. Think about what this means for Pip. The cozy, warm forge, his home, his safety, is instantly abandoned. He is walking, directly back toward the marshes, the exact same scene of a secret crime. This represents something really important, the loss of safety and the sudden invasion of state power into Pip's small, quiet world. Every step he takes towards the marshes increases the suspense because we, the reader, know exactly what he is terrified of being discovered. Moving on to the next scene, the third important scene of this chapter. So, deep in the marshes, the soldiers finally catch up, and what they find is shocking. So, what is that they find is shocking?
You'll not walk free while I still breathe. Get off me! Get off!
Enough! Stand him up, both of them!
Magwitch, Pip's convict, is locked in a violent, muddy fight with the other escaped convict. They are not trying to escape the soldiers at all. They are consumed with so much hatred for each other. But here is the detail that matters most. As Magwitch is captured, chained, defeated, he looks at absolute everything that's there except Pip's face. Why does this matter so much? Because this is Magwitch protecting Pip's secret silently, deliberately, in the middle of his own capture. This introduces a profound moral irony. These two prisoners hate each other more than they fear prison itself. But more importantly, Magwitch, the hardened criminal, shows more genuine loyalty and care toward Pip in this single moment than any of the respectable dinner guests did the entire evening. Think about that contrast for a moment. Moving on to the last important scene of this chapter. Inside a small wooden hut, something extraordinary happens.
It was me. The pie, the brandy, all me. The boy knew nothing.
Wouldn't want to see any man go hungry. Not even you. Time to go.
Magwitch turns to Joe and falsely confesses, claiming that he stole the pie, the brandy, and the file, not Pip. He's taking the blame entirely to protect the boy. And Joe's response? Complete unconditional forgiveness. He simply says he would not want to see anyone starve. This is Dickens showing us true Christian charity. Joe's kindness toward a criminal represents the highest moral good in this entire novel. Then Magwitch is taken away by the boat out to the dark prison ship, and as he disappears, the torches are thrown into the water, extinguished, leaving Pip standing in total darkness. That darkness is not just physical, it is symbolic. It's the convict is gone, but a heavy permanent shadow has now settled over Pip's soul. Something in him has changed forever. Okay, now let's just talk about some setting, tone, and mood. This chapter does something really clever with setting. It builds a tale of two worlds. First, the warm world, the Christmas dinner table, bright, festive, full of mood, but emotionally it is actually cold. Hypocrisy, judgment, cruelty hide behind that cheerful table. Then, second world is the cold world, the dark, freezing marshes during the manhunt, physically brutal but emotionally honest. Real loyalty, real danger, no pretending. And the third, the final world, the prison ship at night. The torches go out in the water, total darkness, both physical and symbolic, closing this chapter forever. Now, this technique is called juxtaposition, placing two opposite things side by side to highlight their contrast. The warm dinner is emotionally cold. The cold marshes hold a real warmth and loyalty. That contrast is the entire point Dickens is trying to make. Let's go through some new words from this chapter. So, the first one is manacles, metal handcuffs or chains that are used to restrain a prisoner's wrists. This is what the soldiers needed Joe to repair. Then we have condescend, to act as if you are graciously lowering yourself to someone else's level. Some of the dinner guests condescend to speak to Pip felicitously in a way that is pleasing or perfectly fitting for the moment. Convivial, friendly, cheerful, full of good company, exactly how a festive Christmas dinner should feel on the surface, at least. Remorse, deep regret, or guilt for something wrong that was done. Pip feels enormous remorse throughout this chapter. Brandished, waved, or held something in a threatening way. Sulkily, in a bad tempered, silent, resentful manner. And finally, hulks. This is an important one. Hulks were old, decommissioned ships used as floating prisons in Victorian England. This is exactly where Magwitch is taken at the end of the chapter. So write these down. Hulks, especially, will come up again later in the novel. Now let's look at the literary techniques Dickens uses in this chapter. So these are from, way different from chapter number one. So pay close attention. So the first one is dramatic irony, and the reader almost shares, the shares, a reader almost shares Pip's fear that the soldiers are after him. But we sense even as we read that they are actually hunting the convicts. We feel his panic, even though part of us suspects the truth. Then the second one is symbolism. The torches being thrown into the water and going dark symbolizes the permanent shadow now, cast over Pip's conscience, a physical action representing an emotional truth. Moral irony. The criminal Magwitch behaves more nobly protecting Pip than the respectable adults at the dinner table did all evening. And just to position the last one, placing two opposite things side by side, the warm dinner versus the cold marshes, to highlight their emotional contrast. So, for your exams, if you are asked how Dickens builds tension or explores morality in this chapter, these four terms used with example will give you a fantastic answer. And now, my favorite part, four questions to carry with you. Question number one. Why does Magwitch protect Pip's secret even while being violently captured? Question number two. Do you think Joe's forgiveness of Magwitch changes how you see him as a character? Question number three. Why might Dickens choose to make the criminal kinder than the respectable adults? Question number four. What do you think the darkness at the end of this chapter means for Pip's future? Hold on to these questions because chapter number three changes everything. And that is chapter number two, complete. In chapter number three, years pass and Pip's world is about to change forever. We meet two of the most fascinating characters in the entire novel, the mysterious Miss Havisham and the cold, beautiful Estella. If this video helps you, please like it. Subscribe, so you never miss a chapter and share it with a classmate who needs it too. I'll see you in chapter number three. Bye.